welcome to Half the Battle, and welcome, my friends, to main character May. Or should I say main character Jaye?
That's right, this month we'll be focusing on Lady Jaye, and today we're starting with the toys. So meet Lady Jaye. This figure was released in 1985 with all original body parts. Yeah, this toy is from the same year as last week's subject, Keelhaul, and I had high praise for that one, so I have high expectations for this figure, as it is from the golden age of G.I.Joe.
And I'm happy to say I'm not disappointed.
Sure, there aren't as many different colors, what with the figure being mostly green with some black, brown and silver highlights, but it's a great look, and the detailing is on par for the time.
Let's start at the top and work our way down.
There's the hat with a silver, blob on it. Still, it looks nice. When it comes to the outfit, for the longest time I thought there were overalls or coveralls, but it's just a shirt and pants. I think it's the texture of the fabric that threw me off. It reminded me of April O'Neil, only not yellow. And yes, I know there's a fun school version that's yellow, but I'd rather wash my hair with cranberry sauce than pay the prices people are asking for that.
Anyway, back to this figure.
The best bit of detailing is the insignia on her arm. It's from an army division and is really well done. Then there's the silver on one of the belt buckles.
Wait, 2 belts again?
What is with this toy line and figures having more than one belt? Okay, the top one could be part of the suspenders thing she's got, but it's not that obvious. The legs are fine. There's pockets. Sometimes I think women join the army just so they'd be able to wear pants with pockets. The last bit of detailing is a molded tagger on her foot, though it also seems to go through the pant leg. That can't be very practical when you have to change clothes. You'd have to take the knife out each time, risking damage to the cloth.
Going back to the top.
I talked about the head, but neglected to mention the face sculpt. It looks good. It's certainly a big improvement on earlier efforts with the original Scarlet and CoverGirl head sculpts. Amazing what 3 years of practice can do.
Lady Jaye came with 3 accessories.
A small but well sculpted backpack, a green camera, making her the G.I.Joe vlogger, I guess, until Scoop shows up anyway, and a thing? Both JoJo.com and the wiki refer to this weapon as a power javelin, whatever the hell that means. It's like a gun that shoots a single javelin, but it's one mold, so it doesn't actually shoot. Overall, this is a great figure from a great year and should be in everybody's collection. And that was the only toy Lady Jaye ever got in the original line. I could end this video right now if I was a dick, but that would make it the length of a Saturday shorty, so we're gonna talk about a few of the figures she got in later years.
And to start off, we're going from the best year of G.I.Joe to the worst one.
So meet Lady Jaye version 2. This figure was released in 1997 with no original body parts. Now, since this toy is from 1997, you'd think I'd have a lot to complain about.
Because the 97 toy line had a lot to complain about.
Hell, I did an entire video on that subject once, but surprisingly, no. This is a good figure. That's mostly because it's a complete repaint of the first version. Yeah, unlike some other figures from that year, they did find the molds of the first Lady Jaye toys, so they could use those.
The color scheme is an interesting new take.
Black with grey, I wanna say camo, I guess, sprayed on it. You could easily call this Night Force Lady Jaye if Night Force had still been a thing in 97. And Night Force ruled, so this figure does too. The accessories are the same as version 1, only black, which adds to the look. My only complaints are that the shoulder rivets aren't painted, just like the rest of the 97 line.
Yeah, can't avoid the 97 stink completely.
Also, her thumbs are really thin, so there's a danger of breaking them. The first figure had this too, but they seem sturdier. Lastly, now this could just be on my particular figure, but it's weird.
I've had to replace the O-ring on this thing more than on any other G.I. Joe figure I own.
The first time this happened, the toy was still fairly new, like 2 years old at most, so I chalked it up to Hasbro using cheap O-rings. But then it kept happening! Or keeps happening, I should say. The O-ring just snaps without being degraded.
So, for anybody out there who happens to own this figure, is it just me or is this a known problem? It's weirding me out.
Anyway, the figure is good. Let's move on. The next time Lady Jaye would get a figure was in 2003 in the Spy Troops line. So meet Lady Jaye version. Dear God, look how tiny that head is. Did it shrink in the wash? Hell, the figure is smaller than the original overall. You can still tell it's Lady Jaye for sure, but like if the figure was made by a different toy company, from a different planet. Spy Troops figures were hit and miss, and I'd put this in the miss category. The figure came with a bunch of accessories that I'm too lazy to dig out.
Look, this is just one barrel of accessories that I have, so give me a break.
Since this was Spy Troops, she had stuff to disguise herself as the Baroness in a Halloween costume for a 4-year-old kind of way. I do have the 2 pistols that fit in her holsters so she can dual wield. Well, I say fit, they're very, very loose, so they will fall out all the goddamn time. This figure is just weird.
Let's move on, shall we?
So meet Lady Jaye version 5. This figure was released in 2006 with 1 original body part. It was part of a comic book 3-pack that also had 2 Cobra Troopers in gas masks. The only new part is the head. The rest of the body is from the original Lady Jaye, though the chest mold has been tweaked. G.I.Joe doesn't list it as being a reuse, but I think it is, just slightly modified. Also,
suspect is hatless. Repeat, hatless.
Yeah, this is the first Lady Jaye without her iconic hat. The funny thing is, even though she's from a comic pack, this makes the figure more accurate to her cartoon appearance. Now, while the head is still smaller than the original, at least it's not as small as the microcranium over there, and it's a good sculpt. No hat, traditional body construction, good look.
Yeah, I really like this version.
It's a good companion piece to the original. This figure came with 2 accessories, a generic gun and a motorcycle helmet, because that's what she had in that particular comic. The pack didn't come with an actual motorcycle though, so hope you got a ram or something lying around so she doesn't look stupid. The helmet does fit, but it's really tight and doesn't look great on her.
For the next figure, we're skipping ahead 7 years.
And we're also skipping over all the modern body construction figures because I don't have any of those. So meet Lady Jaye version 9. This figure was released in 2013 with 1 original body part.
Wait, really?
This was for the Retaliation movie line and they cut costs that much? Yeah, the entire body is from an earlier Scarlet figure with a new head.
Damn it, Hasbro!
Also, somebody get this poor girl a sandwich or something. I mean, there's thin, there's unrealistically thin, and then there's whatever the hell this is. It's not all bad, the colors are nice and subdued, and there's extra articulation at her wrists, knees and feet. But the figure just doesn't do it for me. Speaking of articulation, Dead's movement is severely hampered by her backpack getting in the way of her ponytail. It is removable, the backpack I mean, but that's a pain in the ass to do, so she's kinda stuck looking to the side. Yeah, not a fan of this toy.
The last toy we'll be looking at is the last Lady Jaye figure to come out. Well, in the 3 3/4 line anyway.
So meet Retro or Classic Lady Jaye. This figure was released in 2021 with no original body parts. Yeah, going as cheap as possible, this is just a recolor of the 50th anniversary line's figure with a slightly tweaked head sculpt. Hell, the only reason I have this one is because I never got the 50th anniversary one. It's kinda weird how this one is actually a little smaller than the original, while most modern body construction figures are larger or at least taller. It's a good looking figure, though I'm not a big fan of the head. It just looks off to me. I have heard people actually liking it, so maybe that's just me.
Okay, time to wrap up.
Of all the figures, I still like the original the best, followed by the comic pack one, the 97 one, and the retro one in that order. And those were the toys. Well, the ones I own anyway. And yes, I do have the classified figure, but I'm gonna save that for later since I only just now realized May has 5 frickin' Tuesdays this year, so I have to stretch this crap out.
And today we're gonna be talking about the character, starting with the file card.
And we're starting with the code name, Lady Jaye. Why that name? What does it mean?
Well, first of all, let's get the boring real-world explanation out of the way.
The name is in honor of the wife of Jay Bacall, son of the co-founder of Griffin Bacall, the advertising agency that helped build G.I. Joe, a real American hero, the brand. That doesn't fly within the G.I. Joe universe though, so what is the in-universe explanation?
Well, there isn't one.
I'm not kidding. J is just a phonetic spelling of the letter J, and there's never been an official explanation of what the J stands for. Sorta like Homer J. Simpson.
There are two popular fan theories though, and one that's less popular.
The first popular theory is that the J stands for Joe, because she's a lady, and she's a Joe, hence Lady Joe. I'm not a fan of this idea as it's too generic. It might have worked if she was the only woman on the Joe team, but there are others. Not many, but a few who could also be Lady Joes.
The second popular theory is that the J stands for Javelin.
I like this a lot more since it's specific to her, what with it being her weapon of choice. I'd even go so far as to say maybe Lady Javelin is a real code name, and the Joes just shortened it to Lady J because that's a mouthful to say under the best of circumstances. Never mind when you're in combat and need to address somebody quickly.
The third and least popular idea is that the J stands for Jane.
As an homage to the original G.I. Jane from the 12-inch line. I'm not a fan of this either, as it would only make sense if her real name was Jane, which it isn't, it's Allison. That all brings us back to the Lady Javelin theory, which I consider to be canon, and so should you, because I'm always right about everything.
I'm just inviting somebody to make a massive list of all the things I ever got wrong, aren't I?
One last thing about the code name. This is just a Berenstain Mandela effect kind of thing, but I could have sworn that in some regions her name was spelled as just Lady J. But going through all the foreign file cards I could find, it's always been spelled J. Weird. Yes, there is the comic, but we'll get to that at a later date.
Wow, that was a long time talking about her name. So now let's talk about her name.
Her real name is Allison Hart Burnett. It's a pretty weak pun, heartburn, haha. But it's also a real last name. Hell, just putting it in Google gave me an actual Allison Hart Burnett in the US Army right now, though that could be a fake profile.
Anyway,
she's from Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. Her primary specialty is intelligence, and secondary one is personnel clerk? Okay, a little weird, but hey, Roadblock's secondary specialty is cook, so they don't all need to be badass. Though Roadblock was a badass cook. Her rank is E4, which makes her either a corporal or a specialist.
And now we finally get to the body of text on the card.
She graduated from, dear lord, I have to look up how to pronounce that. Okay, she graduated from Bryn Mawr. That's an all-women college in Pennsylvania. The name is Welsh for Big Hill. She then also graduated from Trinity College in Dublin. This caused her to develop a slight Irish accent. Not that you'll hear that in the cartoon, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Moving on, she's an accomplished actress and mime?
Mime?
Okay, who else just pictured her dressed as a mime?
Yeah, and you'll never be able to scrub that from your mind.
She's also a studied linguist, speaking many languages fluently so she can pass as native in France, Italy, Poland, Russia, Germany, Afghanistan, Spain, and Portugal. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch. Not being able to speak like 9 languages, I can speak for myself, but speaking it well enough to pass as a native, I imagine the writer had to show great restraint by using the term studied linguist and not cunning linguist. As you could just tell, I did not have the willpower to avoid the pun. And come on, it's not like there has never been innuendo in Hasbro media.
Find any new positions?
Anyway, she graduated from yet another school, a military one this time. The Intelligence School at Hollabird, or Holabird.
Ain't you Hollabird, girl? Sorry.
The last paragraph is a quote. Lady J doesn't go in for that phony wig and rubber mask brand of disguise like those jokers on Mission Improbable.
Okay, a lot to unpack there.
First of all, I'm just reading this, and then I look at that Spy Troops figure and I just sigh. Also, weird take at Mission Impossible there. By the way, this was long before the Tom Cruise movies. This was a reference to the TV series that ended in 1973. If that seems dated, you gotta remember the show was still shown in syndication in the 80s. So instead of a rubber mask, she becomes the subject. body language, subtle gesture, correct shading of dialect, the right look in the eye. Again, impressive.
And that was the file card. And you know what wasn't on the card?
Any mention of a freaking javelin, making the codename theory a little bit less likely. They do mention a reflex crossbow, which is weird because crossbows are Scarlett's thing.
The 1997 card alters things a bit.
For one thing, she got a promotion and is now an E7 or Sergeant First Class. The mention of an Irish accent is gone, and it mentions she's in a relationship with Flint, something that seems weird to put on a file card, but you have to remember these 97 cards were written by fans. The jab at Mission Impossible is gone too. The quote now says that because of her role in covert operations, she's less of a team player, though she's friendly and pleasant off duty.
Okay, this card is just weird.
Two later cards don't add much, though for some reason she got demoted to E6 or a staff sergeant. The comic book one changes her secondary specialty to armament repair, with the card saying she likes to relax by repairing vehicles.
The modern body construction ones tend to just stick to the original file card.
Meaning they demote her back to E4. The 25th anniversary one does just come out and name drop Mission Impossible, not Improbable. Bold, considering the movies were a thing by that time. The DVD battle spec card mentions javelins, and for the first time in the toy line, she actually comes with a real goddamn javelins. Not the weird power launcher thing, not a rifle, but actual javelins. I mean, they sorta had to, considering this set was based on the cartoon.
But it's still nice to see.
Later cards don't really add anything, so I think we're finally done. There isn't much foreign file card fun to be had. The Belgian and Dutch cards change their birthplace to Cork, Ireland, and omit the Mission Impossible dig. Changing birthplaces wasn't that uncommon since it was called G.I. Joe The International Heroes here. Cutter, for example, is from Holland on our cards.
So, what have we learned from all these cards combined?
Well, she's an excellent covert operative and an expert with the javelin. She attended many schools and changed ranks more than I changed my underwear, and she's the Joe team's resident mime. Yeah, she's a mime, remember?
And like I said, you'll never be able to forget that.
This is where we're talking about OSW review host Jay Hunter all month long. Okay, no we're not, it's Lady Jaye.
And today we're gonna talk about her appearances in other media, starting with the comic.
She makes her debut in issue 32, and the first thing she does is get catty with Scarlett.
God damn it.
I wouldn't mind so much, but this is the exact same way they introduced CoverGirl too. It's like a rule. When two women meet in the comic for the first time, they have to get into a fight.
And that's all she does in this issue.
Yeah, the comic is in no way about her, she's only in it for 5 panels. Well, she does tell Scarlett she's a replacement, which seems like a taunt, but is actually foreshadowing. As in the very next issue, all the original Joes except Snake Eyes get pulled from the field and put on administrative duties. By the way, in all her appearances up to partway through issue 44, her name is spelled as Lady Jaye, just a letter.
Yeah, it took like 12 issues before somebody got the memo.
Her next appearance is in issue 34, but it's mostly Ace mansplaining the Sky Striker at her during a cool dogfight. In issue 37, where she's briefly a redhead for some reason, she meets Flint, and she immediately doesn't like him, but I guess that's in a tsundere kind of way. Baka Flint.
Okay, it's time to talk about the relationship.
He unsuccessfully hits on her a bunch of times, which honestly should have seen him dragged in front of the G.I. Joe equivalent of Human Resources a bunch, until issue 53, where he impressed her by taking on a whole group of eels by himself. I mean, he doesn't do it just to impress her, that's just a bonus. They start hanging around with each other on a more friendly basis after that, and we see Flint get jealous. They're confirmed to be a couple in issue 63, where they're splashing on a beach and holding hands.
Not that the relationship didn't have any rough patches.
As you can see on the cover of issue 67. And for once, the cover depicts exactly what happens in the issue. But they stay the couple for the entire comic book run.
Speaking of covers,
she's on the issue 44 one. In it, she and some other Joes get kidnapped to be test subjects for Dr. Mindbender's weapons. It's here that her name changes from Lady Jaye to Jaye. And for some extra name trivia, they call Mindbender Dr. Brainwave here. Her last significant cover is issue 77, which occurs just after the Cobra Civil War ended, and she has a cat fight with Serana.
Because of course she has.
Though I guess she was entitled to letting off some steam after being stuck on the flag when all the action was happening on the island. During her comic run, she uses her disguising skills, but only a few times, like when impersonating the Baroness or an old lady, and her javelin prowess isn't really a factor.
Also, there's the hat.
She only wears it sometimes, but it does show up, and it doesn't have a silver blob, but an actual airborne logo. Overall, Lady Jaye had a pretty good run, though often joined at the hip with Flint. She also lasted until the end, even though she only ever got one figure.
I think it has less to do with any love for the character and more with the fact that the comic could use all the women it could get.
So she wasn't about to get Yamchat like some of the other characters. Now, I know some of you wanted me to talk about the UK's Action Force comics, but I never read them, so I can't really give you my opinion, and I don't just want to read you the wiki entry on them. You deserve better than that.
One day I will talk about that series on this channel, okay?
That brings us to the cartoon. She was introduced in the second miniseries, The Revenge of Cobra. Well, I say introduced, she's just suddenly on the Joe team as if she's always been there, just like most of the new characters in that story. Well, Shipwreck got a real introduction, and he ends up flirting with her, but that's dropped pretty quickly after this miniseries. Flint doesn't even get that jealous, but you can tell there's something going on there, and they are shown to be in a relationship later in the series. Her main thing in The Revenge of Cobra is javelins. Javelins, javelins, javelins of all kinds and sizes. It's like the Green Arrow in old comics who had an arrow for everything, to the point I'm surprised she didn't have a boxing glove on a spring javelin.
I have to at least mention the voice.
Cobra's weather control gizmo shot into orbit.
A hoarse voice that could definitely do it for some people. No sign of an Irish accent though, nor of a Scottish one, even though she has some Scottish blood in her.
Well, in the cartoon anyway.
Yeah, you know how I've praised Skeletons in the Closet as a great Destro episode, as well as a great Baroness episode?
Well, it's also a great Lady Jaye episode.
She supposedly inherits a Scottish castle, setting off the events that lead to Destro's family being exposed as a Cthulhu-worshipping cult, just go with it, and the destruction of his ancestral home. Also, the Baroness could get back at him. And the kicker...
I actually believed I was related to a G.I. Joe.
Yeah, she's actually related to Destro in the cartoon, though that never comes up again. I also have to mention the hat, or lack thereof. Yeah, her character model did not have the hat. According to people working on the show, they thought it would cause clipping issues.
You know, I thought I'd have more to say about her in the cartoon.
Various wikis tell me that in the Sunbow series she's the second most featured character after Cobra Commander, but the cartoon was very episodic, so there's no real character growth to be found anywhere. Still, there's plenty of her to see in the cartoon, and that's not a bad thing. Surprisingly, she was also featured in the Deke series that came later, even though she didn't have a toy on the shelves by that time. The same can be said for the Baroness, and like with the comic, I don't believe this has anything to do with a love for either character, but rather that the cartoon was desperate to keep some femininity in the sausage fest that was the cast of characters. She also appeared in a movie called G.I. Joe Retaliation.
She was fine in it.
And that was Lady Jaye in the original comic and cartoons. She had a good run. She had a damn good run in both. And although she was teamed up with Flint a lot, she still got to do plenty of stuff on her own, which was nice to see. She's definitely a mainstay of any G.I. Joe universe, which is why we're celebrating her all month.
So what's in store for next week? Well, you're just gonna have to wait and see, won't you? Well, I'll see you next time, everybody, and hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing? Oh, also, I will talk about the Transformers cartoon and what that implies, just not right now. Yeah, I say this at the very end, just to see if anybody comments on it before getting here. Oh, they're gonna look dumb.
Main Character Me continues with Lady Jaye. And today, we'll be looking at some fun facts, some trivia, and just general weirdness that didn't fit in any of the other videos. First thing, we're going back to the name, Lady Jaye.
Did you know that wasn't the only codename they considered for the character? Oh no, there were others.
For one, there was Lady Jaye. This would have made her Irish, or at least of Irish descent, as it's a Gaelic name derived from the last name O'Shea. At some point in pre-production, it was changed to Jaye, and the Irish thing was relegated to having studied there.
That wasn't the only possible name though.
There was also Shady Lady. Good thing they didn't go for that one, as in some parts of the world, that's slang for prostitute.
Yikes!
Though to be fair, it's also slang for a spy who'd use their, womanly wiles, i.e. sex, to gather information. Another name they considered was Sprite, like the folklore creature? Yeah, I think we can all agree Lady Jaye was the right name to pick, enigmatic though it is.
Moving on.
Last week I only mentioned the G.I.Joe cartoons, but there's more to be had in the Transformers series. In Season 3, the season that came after Transformers the movie, which had a time skip all the way to the distant and unknowable future of the year 2005, the character of Marissa Fairborn was introduced. If that last name sounds somewhat familiar to G.I. Joe fans, that's because it's Flint. And while never confirmed at the time, later interviews with creators did establish she was Flint's daughter, as well as Lady Jaye's.
That's just a neat little Easter egg they put in a Transformers cartoon.
Now, Lady Jaye didn't just have action figures. There has been other merchandise too. From the mundane like trading cards to the slightly weird like a sexy anime style statue. A statue that got recolored to match that ultra rare Fun School version for some reason, and due to the hat makes me think of Mario. It's-a me, Lady Jaye! By the way, that figure wasn't called Lady Jaye, but is a Fun School original character called Canary Ann.
Because yellow, I guess.
The statue calls her Lady Jaye though. You can still get both statues for like $100 each if you want a really awkward conversation piece on your coffee table. Of course, no discussion about Lady Jaye merchandise would be complete without mentioning the nightmare fuel that is the Halloween mask. I already talked about this thing in another video, but needless to say, if the Scream movies had used this instead of the Ghostface mask, it would have been 10 times creepier and more scary. This is something you wear during the purge, people.
Okay, what else is there to talk about?
Well, Lady Jaye was supposed to get her own spin-off TV series on Amazon Prime. This was announced in February of 2021. You'll note that this video came out in May of 2023, and we really haven't heard anything about it since the first announcement. Then again, G.I. Joe live action and development hell have always been cozy with each other, so who knows. In pretty much every continuity, Lady Jaye ends up with Flint, unlike Scarlet, who's either with Duke or Snake Eyes, or both, high resolute, depending on the media. And let's not get into an argument over who the best couple is, as it's clearly Mainframe and Zorana.
Don't at me!
Anyway, she's been called a tomboy at various times because she's in the army and has short-ish hair. But I believe there's a reason for the haircut. She's a master of disguise, and shorter hair is easier to hide under a wig.
That's my theory anyway.
Moving on, somebody regretted that I didn't talk about Renegade's Lady Jaye last time. Well, that's because it's a completely different character. Everybody in that cartoon was. That's also why I only spent like 2 lines on Retaliation last week. I'll probably get to Renegades at some point on this channel, but it's not a priority.
Speaking of other cartoons...
She also appears in Sergeant Savage and the Screaming Eagles. I think. I mean, she's a blonde, but it's clearly supposed to be Lady Jaye. Sergeant Savage was the follow-up toy line to A Real American Hero, and was so much like Captain America, I'm surprised Marvel didn't sue somebody. As with Renegades, I plan to eventually cover it, but again, not a priority.
And I think that about wraps it up.
I'm sure there's facts and trivia I forgot to mention or left out, but I'm sure you lovely people will let me know in the comments below. That's not sarcasm, by the way. I do appreciate people pointing things out that I missed or didn't talk about. And to wrap things up, we're going to look at one of the last action figures Lady Jaye got, at least at the time this video was made. So meet Classified Lady Jaye. This figure was released in 2021 with, body parts. Yeah, I don't have enough classified figures to see if they reused any parts and couldn't really get any answers online. I think most, if not all, of the figure is original.
Now, since this is a classified figure, you have to remember my rule for reviewing these things.
When you hear me praising some aspects like detailing or articulation, you should always picture an asterisk and add the line, as should be expected of a 6-inch figure. So anyway, Lady Jaye has a very nice figure.
Oh, come on, you all knew this joke was coming. Just be happy that I restrained myself until the very last episode.
Seriously though, it's a pretty good looking toy and a really good representation of Lady Jaye.
There's only 2 drawbacks I see with this look.
The arms are a little too thin for my taste, especially the shoulders, but the biggest thing is the eyes. I mean, that stare. It looks like she's a robot or possessed by a demon or something. Fellas, when a woman looks at you like that, it means I'm going to kill you and cut up your body just because I can. The articulation is good.
In theory.
Look, this could just be only on the toy I own, but some of the joints are really stiff or don't do anything. The lower knee joint is a bit stiff, while the upper knee joint is really stiff. So are the elbows, to the point where I'm worried about breaking the damn thing if I use too much force. The upper torso can move, but it just springs back to the original position, so I'm not sure why the articulation is even there. The lower torso can move too, kind of, but I don't think that's intended articulation. It's just due to the way the figure is constructed. Same with the upper thighs. You can move them, but they spring back.
The rest of the moving parts work fine.
The head can move up and down and rotate for a full exorcist. The shoulder moves the same as a small G.I.Joe figure, but the arm swivel is right below the shoulder. There's also wrist articulation, the upper leg swivel, as do the lower legs at the boots. And the feet can move up and down. All in all, honestly, the articulation is a little disappointing. There's only a limited amount of posing you can do.
I can be more positive about the detailing.
The hair is beautifully sculpted, as is the face, if you ignore the stare that'll eat your soul. Next is the collar that is certainly popped. I like it, though it does somewhat obscure an emblem on the chest, made worse by a strap getting in the way.
Speaking of emblems,
I'm disappointed the patch on her shoulder is just the arrowhead emblem and not the more detailed one of the original figure. Yeah, 6-inch figure, less detailed patch.
wrap your heads around that one.
The upper legs have this mesh pattern on them, which looks nice but gets broken up if you use the articulation there. Detailing on the legs and feet is fine, though maybe the boots could have used some additional paint on the straps or something.
Speaking of straps,
Before we get to the accessories proper, there's 2 things that technically qualify, as they're not part of the figure's mold, but they're hard to remove. There's a strap around her torso, which you can line up with the hole for the backpack, or not, you can push it out of the way. It's easier to just shove it aside. And like I said earlier, it can obscure some of the detailing. Then there's the belt, or should I say belts, though it is one piece. An annoying piece that tends to ride up the torso, so you have to shove it firmly down so it stays in place, to the point where it's too low and is in danger of becoming a damn chastity belt, or belts. Yeah, there's 2, and there's even another one molded on the figure, so we got a new record here with 3 freaking belts on one Lady Jaye.
Rob Liefeld would be proud.
Anyway, let's get to the actual accessories. There's javelins. Hallelujah, there's javelins.
Lady Javelin name confirmed.
And it seems here they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, as there's also a javelin launcher. It looks pretty dumb on its own, almost like a flare gun, but when you put in the javelin, it becomes quite like the original accessory. It is a very tight fit though, like you need to apply quite a bit of force to get it in and to take it out, to the point the thing might bend. She also has a small knife. I've kept it on the belt just to show it here as a nice little surprise. She doesn't have a separate camera accessory.
But like with the launcher, they want to have and eat so much cake.
Because it's attached to the backpack, which can also house one javelin. The camera is even articulated, adding literally seconds to the enjoyment of this figure.
Lastly, there's the hat. Only it's not a hat.
It's a complete piece with hair and everything, meaning the original hair is also an accessory. So let's just remove that and...
Fire!
What the unholy hell? Lady Jaye, what did they do to you? Now, before Will Smith takes a swing at me, I have nothing against bald women.
An Oscar slap reference. Yeah, that sure isn't dated.
This isn't a bald woman. This is an Uncanny Valley android that's gonna run around my nightmares for weeks. and the stare isn't helping. Much like myself, it's a lot better looking with the cap on. At least now she doesn't remind me of Megan's older, meaner sister. Personally, I prefer to display the figure without the cap, but it's viewers' choice whether they like one over the other. Or, if you're a freak, you could display without either if you wanted to frighten small children and animals. And that was classified Lady Jaye. In conclusion, it's a good figure and I like it, but I don't love it. There's too much room for improvement for that. Still, not a bad toy to close out main character May with. I'm taking next week off. Now, there will be a Saturday shorty, but I'm gonna put the whole Lady Jaye review up as a single video for Tuesday.
After that, who knows? Well, I'll see you then, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?
Lady